What's going on, everyone? So one of the big things that I talked very heavily about last few years and since I've basically been doing this channel is patience. Patience is very important, right? I understand we're not the most patient fan base. We want things done immediately. In a perfect world, Lakers just go at the minute that clock hit 3:01, signs everybody, trades for everybody, and we're done, right? But that's usually not how it works. Things take time. You got to go and do some stuff. I've seen people like, well, Houston didn't have to take time or Denver have to take time. Can't really compare the Lakers to those teams. Lakers need very specific things. Like Denver needed to kind of round out, get some depth, so they had to figure out ways to get depth. And we also don't have a guy like a Michael Porter Jr. that we could trade, right? Yes, we could trade Austin Reeves as our third guy, but he's not making $40 million like Michael Porter Jr. is. Houston, they had all the cap space, they had everything. They just needed to make a couple moves, right? And the trade for Kevin Durant, we don't have the assets Houston has. We don't have the young players and talent that Houston has. You're comparing, apples to cucumbers, right? It's not something that makes sense, right? You can't compare other teams that are in other situations that have other needs to so on and so forth. Lakers are trying to be in need of very specific things to upgrade this roster, and the Lakers don't have the luxury of getting it wrong. OKC last year, for example, went and made a trade, and the trade was an absolute failure, and they gave up assets for it, but it didn't matter. It didn't hurt them. They just were like, hey, we learned our lesson. We're not going to do it again type thing, right? And that's how, when you have that luxury, you can afford that. The Lakers don't have that luxury and can't afford that, right? Lakers have to make sure that they get this right. Lakers cannot go make a trade that ends up failing. They could not get a center that ends up failing, especially if you're giving up all your assets for. Now, Ayton is a guy that could end up not working out the way that we want him to. But at least it was free. At least you can get out of it. At least you can maybe make, you can always find another answer and solution, right? But Deandre Ayton and Luka Doncic is a great example of patience. Rob Pelinka early on, and there's a lot of things you can criticize Rob for, but early on in his career, he was unpatient, right? Like the guy was the opposite of patience. He usually took the first deal. He usually overpaid. It was a real problem with him, and people bring up like the Russell Westbrook thing. That was something that somebody brought up in my live stream, right? It was like, oh, he didn't take the first deal because he took Russell Westbrook. The Sacramento trade was done, right, for Buddy Hield. That was the first move he was trying to make. And then he was also trying to sign DeMar DeRozan. But the trade was Buddy Hield. That was done. Sacramento was furious because the Lakers ended up backing out of it, right? So, again, he was a guy that usually tended to overpay and ended up, at times hurting the Lakers with the overpays and not valuing the assets. And then he finally fixes that and corrects it, and everyone wants him to overpay for stuff. Imagine if Rob Pelinka did what the Laker fans wanted, and he went and traded all the assets to go get a Nick Claxton because prices are inflated because the Lakers are desperate, and it's like, hey, I have the guy you need. So guess what? Imagine if Rob Pelinka, the moment they hit free agency, went and traded a first round pick, Dalton Connect and swaps to go get Nick Claxton. Right? One, I think a lot of people would have been furious and been like, you overpaid. But guess what? That's the price because the Lakers don't have a center. Right? It's why I talked about if the Lakers could get a Nick Claxton or a Clint Capella or something like that, then that would do wonders for this team because now they're not in a state of desperation. Teams don't want to help the Lakers unless you're Nico, right? But even then, Rob Pelinka still had to negotiate that contract. Right? I see a lot of people that are like, oh, he's just lucking out. Okay, he got lucky with the Luka trade and got lucky with the Deandre Ayton signing. So at what point does it stop being luck, right? What is luck? It's the saying. It's the combination of preparation and timing, right? Maybe that's it. You're patient enough and things fall into place. People also forget that Nico wanted the farm, right? It was Rob Pelinka's job to negotiate to where you were able to still keep assets. Dude, Rob Pelinka could have sold the farm to go get Luka, and it would have been justified. It would have been completely okay, right? But he didn't, right? If you're a salesman, let's say you're a car salesman, right? And a customer walks in that wants to buy, this Mustang, right? Yes, that customer just fell in your lap. You didn't have to go find him. You didn't have to go you didn't have to do anything. That guy walked in and wants to buy that Mustang. But it's your job to negotiate the terms. It's your job to get your commission check. It is your job to ensure that that guy doesn't walk out the door. Just because Nico came to Rob Pelinka with Luka Doncic doesn't mean that he for sure was going to trade Luka Doncic, right? It's like Rob and Nico said, it kind of started out as a joke, and then they kind of explored the idea, and we're kind of like, you know what, maybe this would work. But at any point, that could have fallen apart. Like, again, if you want to criticize people, that's fine. Criticize them for the things that they failed in. Don't criticize them on the things that they were successful in. Like, he was patient and got Luka Doncic. He was patient and got DeAndre Ayton. He also got Dorian Finney-Smith too, right? Via trade. Patience is important, right? I understand we're impatient at times. I feel like I'm impatient at times, but I try to. I talk about the pendulum swing. If you're familiar with this channel, you're very familiar with the pendulum swing that I talk about all the time, right? We have been ride these highs and lows, and I get it. I get the frustrations. I get, we want things. We want to win a championship every year. We have this expectations. We have been privileged as a fan base to have the luxury of winning regularly. Right? The only other team, and I mean, there is no other team that can argue that, because I mean, even the Celtics, yes, they have more championships, but like 10 of them, half the people aren't even alive anymore, right? Like, it happened so long ago. So again, we have been privileged with the winning and success. So we have that expectation, which we should. Right? We should hold the Lakers accountable. We should want and expect greatness from this team. But we also need to yield patience. You got to let things develop. Again, if Rob Pelinka did what all the Laker fans wanted and have been screaming the last month, we wouldn't have been able to get DeAndre Ayton. We'd be out of all of our assets and we'd be screwed. Right? But guess what happened? Rob Pelinka was patient, to his credit. DeAndre Ayton became available. That ended up falling in his lap, whatever you want to call it. But guess what? If he was impatient, DeAndre Ayton doesn't fall into his lap. If he wasn't patient, Luka Doncic doesn't fall into his lap. If Rob Pelinka would have made other trades around the time for Dorian Finney-Smith, the Lakers might have not had the assets to go and get him. What if they traded Max Christie for guys and all they had was Anthony Davis left, right? He wanted a very specific package. What if you had no more picks? Right? Would Nico Harris have just swapped Anthony Davis and Luka Doncic? Probably not. He got Max Christie, Luka Doncic, or Anthony Davis, a first, right? All those things. What if you didn't have half of those things? Right? Again, because he was patient. He waited for the opportunities. He waited for things to present itself and took advantage of those times. Right? Like, that is important. We got to remain patient. And the last two moves that the Lakers have made have been rewarding patience. But here's the thing. Patience is great when it leads to the payoff, right? You can also be overly patient, and that's always the concern. But look, I still stand by the best trade is a no trade if the only other trade is a fleece, right? No trade is better than a bad trade. No signing is better than a bad signing. I'm old enough to remember Timothy Mozgov and Luol Deng, because Mitch Kupchak needed to get something done, wanted to get something done. He was under the clock as far as getting things done, right? Because the brother and everything, and it turned out to be a disaster. I mean, we just finished paying Luol Deng 3 years ago or whatever it was, 4 years ago, right? Like, again, because you felt you needed to do something, you felt the pressure, you gave into the pressure, and therefore you ended up making a foolish move, right? I would rather Rob Pelinka do something. People also forget, and I've said this a million times, Rob Pelinka has made a trade every season he has been in office except for one, and that was the 1 year where he said there was literally nothing. That was the year we all wanted DeJounte Murray and all that stuff. And he said there was nothing. He said, I was trying to make trades. The prices were insane, and there was nothing worth making a trade for. So I didn't do something. I would rather do that. And why wouldn't I believe him when he says that? Because he's made a trade literally every year. I mean, even like random trades like Patrick Beverley, right? He's made trades literally every year he's been in office but one. And so, again, he goes right after the 2020 roster, right, which they made trades to go get. But then you had Dennis Schroeder, right? I'm trying to just think the ones that came to mind. Like Dennis Schroeder, then you had the Russell Westbrook, right? Then you had, like things like Patrick Beverley and D'Angelo Russell and all these other things, right? And then Dorian Finney-Smith. Like, you look at every year that he's been here, he's made some type of trade, some type of move, Anthony Davis trade, all of that stuff, right? He is trade happy. He's willing to do a trade whenever he possibly can. So to think that a guy who is overly trade happy at times, right, says that there's nothing there to take, I'm going to believe that there's nothing there to take. It's like a guy that's just, he's willing to like throw, money around. It's like, if he's not throwing money around, there's probably a reason, right? Like, oh, hey, it was nothing to like throw money at, right? Like, it's like, okay, well, then I believe you because you do it every time we go out, right? You're always handing out something, right? Like, it's just, again, patience is key. I try to get it through on this channel, right? If you could take anything from me, and look, like one of my strengths is patience. I'm very patient. I mean, I have 5 kids, right? You got to be patient. Very patient man. But no, it is. It's very important. You got to let things play out. Obviously, again, wait for the end result, right? Like, people wanted me to hold Rob's feet to the fire before the Dorian Finney-Smith and Luka trade. People were like screaming at me at times, like, dude, like you're not criticizing Rob. You need to be on Rob's behind. You got a voice and all that stuff. And I said, let's wait and see what the end result is. And then all of a sudden he traded for Dorian Finney-Smith. And I was like, hey, it's not over. Let's see what it is. Then they landed Luka Doncic and then followed that up with the Mark Williams trade. Right? Obviously, the Mark Williams trade fell through. But at the time, it was like, see, like I can't criticize somebody until they're finished. If you're an artist and I hire you to do the art, and before you even start, I'm like, yeah, your art's gonna be. I can already tell just by like, I just already tell that you're gonna do a terrible job. It's like, dude, can I at least like paint the mural you paid me to do? Like, can I at least do it before you start like judging my work? Right? Like, that's kind of how I feel. Like, let Rob cook. Let him cook. Right? Let's see what he continues to do. You can't just. It better not just be Ayton and that's it. Right? Or Ayton and Jake LaRavia. Still got to get some free agents in. Got to pull off some trades. I'm not saying you have to do it this offseason. It could be at the trade deadline, whatever. But you got to make some moves. Got to try to win here. You're in a great opportunity. And his patience paid off. But patience, patience, patience. Anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question. You let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.